The AFL free agency and trade period is still a few weeks away, but that hasn't stopped players and the system itself being just about the most talked about thing in the media besides the actual finals going on. A big reason is that so many clubs are already out of the premiership race, so fans want to know how and what their clubs are going to do to try and get better. AFL trade radio has boomed in the past few years as well, and it is becoming a more exciting period of time despite no actual games going on. It's the hope and disappointment it can bring. But a lot of the news about free agency and trade has been negative of late. The system to some is broken and only benefits the best clubs, or some think the players have too much power. So is the system put in place now really broken, or is it a cop-out by clubs to blame something else besides themselves as to explain why players are not joining them or even leaving them? Recency bias seems to be having an effect here. Free agency doesn't favour top 8 clubs. Since its inclusion in 2012, go back and look at every restricted or unrestricted free agent and where they have moved to. There is no clear trend towards a majority of free agents picking clubs higher up on the ladder. But with Brisbane looking likely to get Oscar Allen and even Sam Draper, it has put an emphasis that top teams get the best free agents. Even looking back at last season, we can see this isn't true. Isaac Cumming left GWS to join Adelaide, who finished lower on the ladder, Jack Graham left Richmond for West Coast, and Harry Perryman left GWS to join Collingwood. The only real big move was Josh Battle, who joined Hawthorn. Free agency is also still small in terms of the percentage it makes up in total player moves. This is mainly due to the strict eligibility, which is made up of the amount of years at a club and the player's contract before they hit free agency. In 2024, only 7 players moved as free agents, the same number as 2023, and just 5 moved in 2022. So the free agency system isn't really broken in terms of it giving a huge advantage to clubs higher on the ladder, but it is broken in terms of the compensation clubs get when a player leaves. It's looking likely in the Oscar Allen situation that West Coast will be getting pick 2 for him. Now hypothetically, would Brisbane trade pick 2 for him? I highly doubt it. We also saw this when Ben Mackay left for Essendon. Because of his age at the time, his years served and his new contract, it equaled pick 3 as compensation for North Melbourne. Even Tom Doedee in that same free agency period, off an ACL, got Adelaide an end of first round compensation pick in selection 19. The actual free agency compensation formula and the X's and O's is still unknown. The exact formula used by the AFL for free agency compensation picks is unknown, but the facts can be analysed. A points value is assigned to free agents based on their average guaranteed contract value, what percentile of the AFL contracts theirs falls into, and age, with 25-year-olds getting most value. Once the point values are assessed, free agents are ranked in bands with the top 5% getting a first round compensation pick, while the bottom 30% get no compensation. This is something the AFL will look at in the off-season because it does hurt the evenness of the competition. Again, not necessarily in where the players actually go, but the picks the clubs receive in return, in which many instances is well overs and therefore impacts the national draft the same way an academy or father-son pick would. Now, some have also pointed at the latest Tom De Koning deal to St Kilda as another negative of free agency, that is, that clubs have to give these massive deals to win over players. But that seems to be the cost of doing business to get the best players in the open market, and this is the same for most other sport leagues that have a free agent component in their competition. However, the system of long-term deals is finally biting players in the backside. Seems like every year a new player or two is signing a 7 or 8 year contract, and despite criticism and the risk clubs take that they can go pear-shaped, the best example right now would have to be Clayton Oliver at Melbourne, there are advantages for all parties. The player has long-term security financially, and the club can move money and plan their cap situation for the future. However, with the recent news surrounding Charlie Curnow, Christian Petrarca, Oliver himself, and Jordan Ridley all potentially wanting out, it shows the bad side for the player. Long-term contracts obviously make it much harder to move, and it is in part a big reason why Petrarca and Oliver stayed as Melbourne players for the 2025 season. Curnow and Ridley are both contracted until 2029, which makes it awkward for all the parties involved. Now, we saw Melbourne hold their nerve with Petrarca and Oliver, and we will see how Carlton and Essendon deal with their own situations. In principle, they don't have to do anything, and the way the trade world works, it is normally up to the player's manager to try and get a deal done with the opposing club who wants player X. The Blues and Bombers can sit back and only enter discussion if a deal is close to what they want. But we do see clubs budge. We saw it last year with Port Adelaide, who traded Dan Houston away despite having 2 years left on his deal, and Melbourne did move off Alex Neil-Bullen, albeit for family reasons, despite his deal running until the end of 2026. It seems like if a player pushes hard enough for a trade away, a deal does end up getting done, and it does go to show the power players have, which does exceed that of the clubs. In that way, the trade system is a touch unbalanced. The AFL won't look at this, however. It seems like free agency is the only thing they will go over in the off-season. It's probably because of the AFLPA and the influence they have. If no player consent was needed for trades, it would be a whole new trade landscape. Even if we had to bracket players eligible, such as those with at least 3 years to run on their contract and an average yearly salary of $800,000 or more, it would still give a little more power to clubs, but it's barely worth discussing because it doesn't look like it will ever happen. I'm sure the AFL could suggest solutions to the Players Association, such as no trade clauses, no interstate moves, or trade options to only a select few clubs in contracts. The trade system is in favour of the players, who often get to choose where they go if a trade is completed. So it's fair to say the quote-unquote free agency and trade systems are far from perfect, with both avenues becoming more important than ever to try and improve quickly due to the issues with the draft. Both have to be a focus at AFL House. Free agency is the easier one to solve in terms of better calculating free agency compensation, and all reports are pointing towards that being done very soon. Perhaps the trade area is the one that looks less likely to be solved, and an area of the game clubs should be pairing together with to try and balance more on their own terms.